In the vast and often harsh desert, a group of people trudge through the sand, their feet sore and their spirits low. They were the Israelites, a people who had just escaped the clutches of Egyptian slavery, guided by the hand of a powerful and unseen God. Yet, despite the miraculous events that had brought them to freedom, the parting of the Red Sea, the plagues that had crippled Egypt, their faith was fragile, their trust in their leaders wavering. They murmured, they complained, and they doubted. This is the story of their journey, a story of trials and tests, of faith and fear, and of a God who was both present and mysterious. As they wandered through the wilderness, the Israelites faced one challenge after another. The first test came when they arrived at the wilderness of Sin. The sun beat down relentlessly, and their thirst became unbearable. They turned to Moses, their leader, demanding water. "Give us water that we may drink," they cried. But Moses, overwhelmed by their constant complaints, felt the weight of their anger and fear. He asked them, "Why do you dispute with me, and why do you test the Lord?" The people's response was both a cry for help and a veiled accusation. They believed that Moses and his brother Aaron had led them to their deaths, that the God who had promised them freedom was now abandoning them to die of thirst. Moses, in his desperation, turned to the Lord, crying out, "What shall I do with this people? Yet a little more, and they will stone me." God's response was both reassuring and instructive. He told Moses to pass before the people, to take the staff that had once turned the Nile into blood, and to strike a rock at Horeb. Moses did as he was told, and water gushed forth, quenching the people's thirst. The place where this miracle occurred was named Massa and Meribah, which means testing and dispute. It was a reminder that even in the midst of their complaints and doubts, God was still with them, still providing for them. But the challenges did not end there. Soon after, the Israelites faced another test of their faith when they ran out of food. They began to grumble, saying, "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the fleshpots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Their words were a stark indictment of Moses and Aaron, and a challenge to the God who had promised to care for them. God, however, had a plan. He promised to rain down bread from heaven, a substance called manna, which would sustain them during their journey. The manna was a miraculous provision, appearing each morning on the ground like fine, flaky frost. Moses instructed the people to gather only what they needed for the day, warning them that any leftover manna would spoil. This was a test of their trust in God's provision. Some, however, did not listen and kept extra manna, only to find it infested with worms and stinking the next day. On the sixth day, God provided a double portion of manna, which the people were to gather and keep for the Sabbath, a day of rest. This was a sign that even the natural order of things was subject to God's sovereignty, and that the Sabbath was a sacred time set apart for worship and rest. The story of the manna is more than just a tale of a miraculous food source. It is a lesson in trust and obedience. The Israelites were called to trust in God's provision, to gather only what they needed, and to observe the Sabbath. In their grumbling and disobedience, they revealed their lack of faith and their tendency to rely on their own strength and resources. Yet, God's patience and grace were evident in His continued provision, despite their failures. The next challenge came when the Israelites encountered the Amalekites, a fierce and warlike people. The Amalekites attacked the Israelites at Rephidim, and Moses called upon Joshua to lead the fight. But the battle was not just a physical one. As Joshua and his men fought, Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to a hilltop, where Moses raised his hands, holding the staff of God. When Moses raised his hands, Israel prevailed. When he lowered them, Amalek gained the upper hand. Moses' hands grew heavy, and Aaron and Hur supported them, ensuring that they remained steady until the sun set. This symbolic act of raising the hands was a sign of faith and trust in God's power. It was a reminder that the victory was not theirs, but the Lord's. The battle against the Amalekites was a turning point. It was a test of the Israelites' faith, not just in God's provision, but in His protection. The victory was not due to their own strength or skill, but to their trust in God's power and presence. After the battle, Moses built an altar and called it Nissi, which means "the Lord is my banner." It was a declaration that God was their strength, their shield, and their salvation. The story of the Israelites in the wilderness is a story of faith and doubt, of trust and testing. It is a story that resonates with us today, for we too face challenges and tests that can shake our faith. We, like the Israelites, are called to trust in a God who is both present and mysterious, who provides for us even when we do not understand. The manna, the water from the rock, and the victory over the Amalekites are not just ancient stories. They are symbols of God's ongoing provision and faithfulness in our lives. In the end, the Israelites learned that their journey was not just about reaching a promised land, but about growing in their faith and trust in God. Their grumbling and complaining, their doubts and fears, were opportunities for God to show His power and presence. And in the midst of their struggles, He was always there, guiding them, providing for them, and leading them to a place of rest and peace. So, as we face our own challenges and tests, may we remember the lessons of the Israelites. May we trust in a God who is both present and powerful, who provides for us in ways we cannot understand. And may we, like Moses, raise our hands in faith, declaring, "The Lord is my banner."